For the past 36 years, I've been some sort of a rebel. Not in the loud and boisterous sense, but as a silent, spy-like defier of norms. Growing up in Kur-dis-tan, I had to be quiet, shy, and obedient because girls weren't allowed to raise their voice, speak out, or play outside. One day, I convinced my mom to buy a bicycle for my little brother, but I had a secret agenda. I even selected the bike for him, as I wanted to be the one riding it. I wanted to ride a bike like the street boys, riding hands-free and feeling carefree and rebellious. So during siesta hours, when my mom and all the other parents were sleeping, I would sneak outside to ride my brother's bike in the scorching sun. The street would be full of boys, and some would surround me saying, "Oh, wow, you have some balls," while the others would tell my little brother that his sister had gone rogue. They would clap, whistle, cheer, and chase after me. Not because they were happy for my emancipation, but because it was seen as not normal. The only problem was I didn't know how to properly use the brakes, so I would often end up in the rubbish dumpster down the road. I would go home smelly, scared, but elated. Elated because I believed I was owning my power. Their local parents would complain to my parents about my rebellious behavior, saying, "Your daughter shouldn't be seen on a bike," or people would start saying and thinking she's gone rogue. Basically, what they were saying was, "Stop her now, or she might encourage our daughters to do the same." My rebellious behavior wasn't just acknowledged by those outside of our home, however. In 2015, my dad took me out for a coffee date and said, "Listen, if you want to be rebellious and marry outside of our culture, marry a European so they don't stand in the way of your ambitious pursuits, but also so you get to explore that part of the world and I can always come and visit." I agreed. A couple of months later, I introduced him to my now South Korean husband. He looked at me confused and said, "What happened to the European I suggested you marry?" I said, "Well, Dad, he may not look European, but the thing is, he rode his bike all around Europe, so I guess that pretty much makes him European, don't you think?" He shook his head and said, "Well, at least you'll have some very good-looking children." This unconventional marriage marked the first time a Kurdish woman tied the knot with a Korean man. It sparked interviews and discussions. It was seen as something new and rebellious to the masses. On YouTube, someone commented, "She's gone rogue." This is exactly what happens when Kurdish parents don't domesticate their daughters overseas. Little did they know that I was in charge of myself and had been for some time. For me, this autonomy cemented when at the age of 17, I consciously embraced a renegade spirit by renouncing all religious affiliations and adopting an existentialist perspective. I marked this momentous rite of passage by getting a tattoo on my left shoulder with the word Invictus, meaning unconquerable in Latin. And I declared myself the master of my fate, the captain of my soul. Or perhaps it was earlier than that, when at 13, as a fresh-off-the-boat refugee, I took my first pivotal step towards self-determination. By changing my given name, Der Chol, meaning empty village or ghost town, a name that was created for me by my parents after the Saddam Hussein genocide and fall campaign, to Donna, woman in Italian. So I guess you could call me a rebel, but not by the standard definition. The world wants us to view rebels as those who defy established norms, expectations, authority, or the status quo, often breaking rules for the sake of seeking their own selfish gain or thrill. Such troublemakers disrupt peace without a clear purpose. They cause unrest, mischief, terror, and destruction without constructive goals for the betterment of humanity. This is how society usually defines a rebel. But this is not the only kind of rebel. The rebels who truly change the world are those driven by a purpose beyond themselves. Such individuals are not pursuing personal goals. They aim for something bigger, more inspiring and meaningful for the collective. Something that would resonate through time in its impact and legacy. They are rebels who challenge authority with positive intent and conviction, carrying out their rebellion with principled disobedience and opposition. Such positive impact-driven rebels are seen leaving the world better than when they found it. These rebels can be aptly called kind rebels. Kind rebels teach us that causing chaos isn't the path to lasting impact. Kind rebels act with deliberate intent, guided by a compass of compassion, empathy, and ethics. The rebels and renegades throughout history have indeed played pivotal roles in innovating, reinventing, and breaking many a boundary and glass ceiling. We owe much to these individuals because without them, the world would be at the mercy of the conventional. And boy, how that would be an impossible and boring world. Their stories echo in various fields, from science and technology to education and civil rights. There are kind rebels everywhere. They are all around us, in the form of well-known figures like Nelson Mandela, but also in lesser-known entities like me, or perhaps like you. Who among us has defied expectations set by society? Or rather, who among us hasn't defied expectations set by society? Perhaps you have disobeyed rules, questioned authority, rejected cultural stereotypes, stood up against an oppressive regime, society, or individual. Regardless of the specifics, if you have chosen to defy any of these admonitions, you have embraced your inner rebel. When we look back in time, we see that the rebels who truly change the world share another common thread. They are often engaged in some form of kind rebellion, as opposed to negative, chaotic rebellion for its own sake. Look at Rosa Parks. When she was told to give up her bus seat to a white man, she had had enough of saying yes to a law that was utterly nonsensical and hurtful. She said no. No, she wouldn't give up her bus seat to the white man just because she was African American. She purposefully challenged discrimination. Rosa Parks' principled stance against segregation led to the Montgomery bus boycott, which of course is a key moment in the civil rights movement. But her rebellion wasn't troublemaking. She didn't burn the bus. She didn't kill the man. By standing up against the norm, which was abnormal and scary, Rosa Parks delivered an audacious act of intentional defiance which changed her society as well as the world. Martin Luther King is another paramount example of a kind rebel, who is of course a revered symbol of nonviolent resistance. Dr. King dedicated his life to advocating for civil rights and equality for African Americans through peaceful protests, compelling speeches, and civil disobedience. He set out to ensure he would see the day when Black girls were not treated as second-class citizens just because of the shade of their skin color. His I Have a Dream speech is in itself an act of rebellion. Dr. King may not have lived to see a multiracial America, but it was his very act of peaceful rebellion that led to desegregation, the right to vote, labor rights, and emancipation of African Americans. So what compels a rebel to take an unconventional path, to face opposition, to lose their freedoms and put themselves at risk? When Rosa Parks found herself at the crossroads of conformity and rebellion, what made her risk her own personal freedom while fighting for her birthright equality? Or made Dr. King step away from the safety of the known and venture into uncharted territories, even if it meant jail, derision, and unrest? It's at this point of decision in the rebel's journey that a universal calling is revealed to the hero. It's here that a profound desire for autonomy and the pursuit of purpose take root within the kind rebel. In each of us, there's a bit of a rebel, and the future belongs to these rebels. Being a rebel is something to embrace and be proud of. So what can you do as an entity to embrace your inner rebel and inspire collective kind rebellion? You can defy the status quo and liberate yourself from convention, whether it involves changing your name, status, career, or embracing love across cultural boundaries. You can inspire change by blazing new trails or paving the way for others toward transformation. You can empower others to stand up for their own rights while challenging the injustices of this world without resorting to violence. You can take small, kind, rebellious actions or big ones if you choose. At times, you may rebel by doing nothing at all. You may be kind and you may be rebellious because the world needs more kind rebels. It needs more entrepreneurs, change makers, movers and shakers who truly want to change the world. Kind rebels are the leaders and heroes of tomorrow, but also of yesterday, because it's they who pushed for the changes and transformations that have given us the rights and freedoms we all get to enjoy today. So to all kind rebels here and beyond, embracing your inner kind rebel is the only worthy fight there is. So if you're going to rebel, go all the way. Otherwise, don't bother starting.